All right. So how do we submit assignments from PyCharm? Do we download a link? So what I will be doing is I will be sending you the link for the Google Classroom. You will simply need your Gmail account to log into that. Uh, Shared with you for example, the assignment two. Okay, so what I can do is I can show you guys last year's Google Classroom real quick as an example, since ours is empty right now. So let's have a quick look over there. All right, so in here you can see all the assignments were uploaded, right? So for example, right now we are on assignment 2, right? This is the one you want to be submitting. So when you open classwork and go to assignment 2, you will see the attachments over here, which will describe the assignment, right? And then I am an instructor, so I don't see that option over here. But when you open this, you will see an option to upload your work in here. So you will be able to turn in your assignments, and I'll be able to see them here, and I'll be able to check them. So it will basically open a file system pop-out menu, and you'll be able to select your file, the .py file that you were working on in PyCharm, and then you can submit that file, right? So if you have any doubts, we can go over this next class. So you can stay back after that class and we can look into it if you're having trouble uploading assignments. So any other questions? Okay, so let's go back to the assignment. Please also maybe go through answers after assignment. So we don't generally have enough time for that, but what we can do is if you have any questions regarding the assignments, you can always stay back after the class and we can look into what questions you have. All right, so let's go to our assignment. Okay, so this will be the next assignment that I will be sending out. All right, so this is assignment 3. It will be an activity suggestions app. Okay, so your client is extremely indecisive with what to do in their free time. So I will let you read into it, but basically what you want to be able to do with this program is you need to be able to indicate whether it is a weekday, right? So it will indicate whether it is a weekday or it is a weekend. So this will be a Boolean value. So if you remember, a Boolean value is either true or false. Yeah. Then we have the current weather. This will be a string value. Okay. And then we have the funds the user has available to spend. And this will be a numeric value, right? This makes sense. So these will be 3 variables that you will create in your code. Um, Client lives in a place where the weather is either nice, raining, or freezing. So these will be the 3 strings that can be in the current weather, right? So you can use a set and put those 3 strings in it, and you can use the in operator to check if it is one of those 3. So this is a useful hint over here. So over here, you will see further instructions about what you have to do. So after verifying that the weather entered is valid, the program should do the following. So first it will check if it is a weekday, right? If it is a weekday, the program should output a reminder stating this, right? So you will simply print this statement out. If the weather is not nice, then it will do this. So I will let you read through this. I will be sending this assignment via email and I'll also be uploading it to that Google Classroom. But are there any questions that you think there might be? So the biggest hint here, I would say, is that you would want to use if-else statements here, right? If, else, elifs. Those will be the majority of what you will be doing in here. Okay. So any questions on the assignment? So these will just be a bunch of cases. You will just check if these are true. If these conditions are true, you will do what it says, right? It's pretty straightforward. But let's go over to our presentation now. All right, so we're going to get started with data structures part 2, right? There's only 3 people in class. Anyways, so a data structure. So can anybody remind me what a data structure is? Anybody remember from the previous lecture? Okay, so a data structure is essentially a means of storing and organizing a collection of data values, right? And what is a data value? It can be a string, boolean, or numeric data type. And you can also have data structures within data structures, right? So that can also be a data type in itself. So each data structure has their own method, right? That is what you can do with that data structure, the action that it will perform on the data, right? So there are different kinds of data structures. And the first one we've already learned about is the set, right? And today we're going to look at arrays. So wait, I think we already did this, right? Give me a second, hang on. Okay. So to use arrays, right, what we need to do is we need to know 4 things about them, right? So they're ordered, they're non-unique, they're of a specified type, and they're mutable, right? So let's see what each of these things mean. So first we have ordered, right? So what does ordered mean? It means that the order in which you put the things in the array is the order in which they will remain, right? So if in the case of sets, we saw that this wasn't happening and we were actually seeing that the order was being changed. But in an array, the order is maintained, right? Then we have a set, sorry, unlike a set, it is non-unique, right? So what does that mean? If you put multiple of the same elements inside this data structure, it will keep multiple of them, right? So for example, if you have 4 ones in here, it will keep 4 ones. It won't just make it 1 1 as it was in a set, right? Then we have a specified type, right? So you will always have a specified type within an array. So you can't have strings with numbers in the same array, right? And then you have mutable. What does that mean? That means that you can alter the values of the elements in an array. So you can point towards a particular index and you can say, okay, I want to change the value of this particular value of this particular number in the array. And you can simply index it and you can change it, right? So to use arrays, what we want to do is we want to do from array import star, right? So this is something you have to write in the first line. Otherwise, we won't be able to use arrays, right? So we will learn more about importing packages, and this is simply importing the array package. But for now, all you need to know is that you need to write this line in the first line, otherwise we can't use arrays, right? So let's have a quick look at arrays in PyCharm. All right. So this is a set, right? This is what we were looking at last time. So for an array, what we need to do is first we need to do from array import star, right? Now, once we do that, we can use the array data structure. So let's create one for integers. So how do we do that? Let's name our array. Let's call it my array. Then you can say array, open parentheses. Inside these parentheses, first you will specify the type. So right now we want to use integer. So we will say I, right? And then you can put a comma, and in here you can put the data structure, right? So let's say we want to put odd numbers in here. So now we learned that they are mutable. So what does that mean? That means that we can change the values of these individual integers in this array, right? How do we do that? We can say my array, right? Then we use square brackets, and then we can look at their index, and using that index, we can call them, right? So for example, I want to call this 5. So we start counting with 0, 0, 1, and 2, right? So at the 2 position, we have 5. In the square brackets, we can put 2, right? So if we try to print this out, we'll get 5, right? How did we do that? We called the second element in this array. And in Python, we start counting from 0, not 1. So 0, 1, and 2. So the second element is 5. Make sense? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Sorry, do you have a question?
No, no, no. Just saying it makes sense.
Okay, okay, great. So let's go to the presentation again and have a look at some of the methods that we can use with arrays. All right, so first up we have the append method, then we have pop, insert, remove, and index. So I have a question in chat saying, do we need a connection in order to import a package? So generally for packages like array, you won't need it. There are certain packages that might need it, but for our purposes, you can assume that we don't need it. So as I said, we'll learn more about Python packages later on in this course, but this package you can use without an internet connection. All right, so first up, we have the append method, right? So let's go to our presentation. Oh, sorry, let's go to PyCharm and try to run some code. All right. So let's print out the entire array once. Let's try to have a look at what that looks like. So I try to run this, and here we get array, and this is the array we made, right? And as you can see, the order is also maintained. All right. So now let's try to add something to this array, right? So the what the append method does is it adds something to the end of the array. So after 9, it will put whatever we put in this bracket, right? So for example, I want to put 11, right? And if after this I print the array, now you can see after I added the 11 and printed the array, the 11 has been added in here, right? The next method we want to look at is pop, right? So what pop does is you can first have a variable. Let's say I have a variable called x, right? And then you can say my array dot pop. So what this does is it will remove the last element in the array and assign it to this variable x, right? You don't need to have a variable here, so you can also just do this, and this will simply just remove the last member of this array, but it won't assign it to any variable, right? So that is just something optional that you can do with this method. So in my case, I'll use the variable and then use the method pop. Then I'm going to print out the array, right? So my array, and let's also print out x. All right. So after I've hit pop, what happened was the last 11 here gets removed, right? And it gets assigned to this variable x. So as we can see over here, the variable x is 11 now, right? So what other methods do we have? Next up, we have insert. All right. So we can do my array dot insert, right? And then for insert, what we can have here is first we have the value and then we have the index, right? So what is the value? Let's say we want to insert 2, so 2, and what will be the index? Let's say I want to put it between this 1 and 3, so the index will be 1, right? Now if I print my array, right, let's see what happens. And here we can see that we added 1 to this 2 position. So actually this should be swapped around. It is index comma value, not the other way around. So if I put 1 comma 2, then we will put 2 on the 1 index. So if I run this, now it will do what we wanted it to do, right? So for insert, first you put the index, then the value, okay? So if you ever have any doubts on this, you can always Google it, right? So you can always Google, for example, array.insert, and you will probably be led to the Python documentation, and there's usually some examples there. All right, so what's the next method? Next up, we have remove. So with remove, what we can do is we can remove the first instance of a particular value, right? So let's say, let's create a new array, right? Let's call it my two array. And then we can also make this an integer array. And here we can put, let's say, let's put in some repeat values, right? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Let's try to print it out first as well. All right. So now from this array, if I try to remove 2, right, and then I print out the array again, let's see what happens. Okay, so I ran this code And this is my second array first, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we can see it removed the first two. So it had two twos in here, but as you can see, it only removed the first one. So if you use remove, just remember that it will only remove the first instance of whatever value you provided, right? And then last we have index. So what index does is it will return the index of the first value that you put in the bracket, right? So let's look at an example of that as well. Right. So we have index, right? All right. So in index, now let's see. I want to know the index of 3, right? And let's print this out. So if I try to run this, as you can see, the index of 3 is 1, right? So as you can see over here, at 0 index we have 1. On the first index we have 3. So it gives us 1. There's another 3 in here as well, but it will give us the index of the first one. Okay. All right. Let's go back to the presentation. Okay. So next we have dictionaries. So dictionaries are unordered collections of key value pairs where values are mutable, but keys are not, right? So you can't change the values of the keys, but you can change the values of the values, right? So before we even get into that, what is a key value pair, right? So basically, if we go back to our PyCharm window, uh, right. So if you remember, we tried to index it, right? So if I want to, for example, print out the first element in this array, right? What will I do? I will say my array bracket 0, right? So you can say that this 0 over here is the key, right? Or the index, and then the value corresponding to that index or key is 1, right? So that is how we think of key value pairs. And what a dictionary allows you to do is it allows you to have these keys not just be numbers, but be strings or any other data types, right? So let's go back to our presentation and see what I mean. So it can be defined using curly brackets or using the dictionary constructor, right? So you can say my dictionary equals, and then you can just put empty curly braces, right? You can also use the DICT and then open parentheses constructor function, right? So in there, you don't need to put anything, and that will be an empty dictionary, right? All right, so let's try to make our first dictionary. So let's create another file. Let's call this one UI. We'll have to create a configuration. Second here. I just don't want to lose the code we wrote, so I'll upload that to um, our Google Classroom that I just showed as well, so that you have access to all the codes I run during class from now as well. So, okay, all right. So now we can create a dictionary in here. Let's call it my dictionary equals DICT. So that will create the dictionary for you. Now what you can do is you can say my dictionary. Now let's say I want to say John, and the John will be the key here. And let's say the value is um, doctor. So let's say the key in this dictionary is the name of the person, and the value is their profession, right? So further we can do, let's say we have Casey over here. They are, let's say, yeah, more people in here, right? Right. So you can keep going like this, and then what you can do is you can try to print out your dictionary and see what it looks like, right? So if I try to run this, you can see everything gets stored quite neatly, right? So you have your key over here, then you have a colon, and then you have the value, right? So these are the values I assigned. So for John, we have doctor. For Casey, we have engineer. For Caleb, we have businessman, right? So all three of those are over here. All right. So next what we'll do is we'll have a look at some indexing, right? So over in these three lines, we are assigning these values, right? But what we can also do is we can retrieve those values once we assign them. So we can say my dictionary and then say John, right? And what this will do is it will say doctor, right? So basically what happens is you're indexing, but using this key, right? So in this data structure called my dictionary, corresponding to the key John, we will have doctor. So when we try to call the value corresponding to this key, we will get doctor, right? Because you can see that in the data structure as well. This is how they get stored. All right. So if you try to access something that does not exist, you will get an error, right? So if I try to, for example, ask the dictionary what Jack's profession is, it will tell me it doesn't know, right? And it will tell me very angrily with red lines. So you don't want to access these. What you want to do is you want to be sure that whatever you're accessing from the dictionary already exists. And if you're not sure, what we can do is we can use the in keyword, right? So it also works in here. So what you can do is if Jack in my dict dot keys, right? So basically what this does is this will check if the value Jack is present in the list of keys for this dictionary, right? And then if it is, okay, so we want to put a colon here, right? And then if it is present in there, what we can do is then we can print it out, right? So print dictionary Jack, right? So now if I try to run this, we don't get any error. Why? Because this statement is false, so it never goes here. And because it never goes here, we don't get an error. So this is how you can prevent yourself from getting error messages and preventing the code that is below it from running, right? So this is a good way to check if something is in a dictionary. Okay, so we've learned about adding new values to dictionaries. We've learned about accessing those values. We've learned about how to not access them as well, right? So if you're accessing any value, make sure first you check that it is in there, right? So now let's look at some methods for dictionaries. So first we have the get method, right? So how does that work? Let's see. So first we use the dictionary name, then a dot, and then the method. The method here is get. Right? So for get, first we need the key, right? What is the key? For example, we have John, right? And then we have a default value, right? So basically what that does is, so let's say we have not found. These two lines I wrote over here basically do the same thing as this. But in this case, so what get does is get is more safe than simply accessing it like this, right? Why? Because over here, I can actually say Jack without running into any errors, right? So let's try to run this. So it will say not found. So basically what happens here is it first tries to find this key, right? So this get method will try to find this Jack key in this my dictionary. So do we see that? No. So then what it does is it sends back the default value instead of sending an error message. So this is another way you can prevent yourself from creating an error situation, right? So for dictionaries, try to access using get and not using the square brackets that we use for arrays, right? All right, so we already looked at the keys method, right? So we can have a look at it again. My dict dot keys, right? And if I try to run this, you will get a list of all the keys, right? So we have three keys in our dictionary. They're John, Casey, and Caleb. Similarly, what you can also do is you can get a list of all the values, right? So my dict dot values. If I run that, we'll get all the values. And then lastly, we can also do items. So what that will do is it puts each of the key value pairs in their own data structure and then puts all of those individual data structures into a bigger data structure, right? So over here we can see what happens, right? So it kind of separates the key value pairs, right? Okay, so that's all I have for you guys today. I'll upload both of these files to the Google Classroom, and I'll also send that Google Classroom link via email to everyone today. I see a hand raised. Refilway, do you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to ask for the dictionaries when you want to perhaps print a string and a integer. For example, if John the doctor is 32, how do you then print both a string and an integer in one
Okay, so what we
dictionary?
can, yep. So what we can also do is we can have a data structure be the value of this, right? So what we can do is we can make it like this. We can make it a set which contains doctor and 32, right? So now if I run this, you will see John has both the values, doctor and 32, right? You can make this even more detailed, right? And what you can also do is you can make it a dictionary within a dictionary, right? So you can make the value over here be a dictionary. So, right, so let's make it big, right? Then what we can do is my dictionary, John, and then let's say we can say profession, and then for uh, age, let's say we can have an integer called, and then we put 32, right? So now if I run this, you'll see this dictionary gets stored as the value for John. So you can print that whole dictionary out if you want.
Okay.
Does
All
that make
right. Thanks.
sense?
Yes, no, it makes sense.
Great.
So you could use something like this to maybe create a code for, let's say, if it was for hiring people and you wanted to pick um doctors for the post of maybe the vacancy of a doctor, if the doctors should be of the age, or maybe not age, experience of 10 years or less,
Yeah,
then you
I
would use the
definitely
if.
Yeah, I definitely like the way you're thinking. So the only problem with that would be that these values can't be stored anywhere as such. These only exist while the Python code is running. So you would actually have a database that would have all the information that these, like for example, what John's profession is, what John's age is, and then you could use that
Mm,
uh, to create an array which has all this information, and then you can use that in your.
okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop recording.